American Airlines, United, and Delta had each been in business for over 35 years before Southwest Airlines began to fly. Yet Southwest became worth 4 times more than the other 3 combined. Criminals in Dallas face a reinvigorated police department, which is determined to cut crime and help the city promote economic development.
Good morning!
In 1987, Starbucks operated 11 stores. 20 years later, there were 11,000 Starbucks. With China, the biggest potential market, just beginning to open up. Greatness is found in every sector of society. Is it driven by lasting principles that can be conscientiously applied by anyone willing to put in the effort? Jim Collins began to study enduring great companies while teaching at Stanford Business School. In 1996, he returned to his hometown of Boulder, Colorado, to found his management research laboratory. His search for answers began with a single question.
We wanted to know one thing. Can a good company become a great company? And if so, how? If I were to pick one sentence out of all of our work so far that is the most important, it would be simply this. Greatness is not a function of circumstance. It's a function of choice and discipline.
According to Collins' research findings, organizations that make the leap from good to great distinguish themselves from those that do not by embodying fundamental principles, beginning with Level 5 leaders who show ambition for the organization, a resolve to take decisive actions, and a compelling modesty for themselves.
The signature of those leaders is not their towering personality. Rather, it was their humility.
Hiring the right people comes first, even ahead of strategy.
If you have the right people, they're self-motivated. If you have the right people, they're self-disciplined. If you have the right people, they are self-inspired.
Confront the brutal facts. The harsh reality facing the organization, however grim, must be dealt with.
Let's get a handle on the facts, and then have faith that we can transcend those facts and build a great company.
Out of confronting reality evolves the hedgehog concept.
It is a deep, penetrating clarity of what you can and what you cannot be the best at.
The flywheel. Momentum builds as decisions are driven by a culture of discipline that adheres to the hedgehog concept.
Discipline is not just about what you add, what you put on your to-do list. It is equally and just as much what you do not do.
The final stage is building greatness to last. Core values lead the organization to sustained high achievement.
Thank you.
What organization would Collins choose to illustrate some of these principles in action?
You go back to 1972. You have a chance to invest $1 in every publicly traded company. You do so. You take it out 30 years later. Who comes out number 1? Well, it's not Walmart. It's not Walgreens. It's not Intel. It's not GE. It is, of all things, an airline. You can't imagine a more difficult environment. You have fuel shocks, deregulation. You have bankruptcy after bankruptcy, and yet the number 1 best performing stock over a 30-year period is Southwest Airlines.
There's a new airline in town with one of the best on-time records in the country.
Mr. Smith, you're early.
It may take some getting used to.
Some people have said that the business of business is business. I've always said that the business of business is people. Recognizing them and honoring them as individuals. Giving them the liberty to be themselves in the workplace.
Well, it's stimulating. I can certainly say that.
It's not something you write on the blackboard and you follow a policy or program for 6 months and then you forget about it. It's got to be a way of life, an understanding that everybody has.
Kelleher here.
You're gonna love our Southwest spirit.
Everybody thinks the reason this airline is successful is because they were innovative, they were different, they were radical, they were somehow something that no one else had ever been. But in fact, if you go back in history, you'll find that Pacific Southwest Airlines had the same model at the same time in the biggest market, California. And so you have to puzzle and scratch your head and say, well, why did Southwest succeed and Pacific Southwest Airlines did not succeed, and they had the same model?
The answer, says Collins, is that Southwest built a culture of discipline around one big idea that guided every decision for more than 30 years, what the research team called the hedgehog concept. A Greek parable distinguishes between foxes, which know many things, including 50 ways to kill a hedgehog, and hedgehogs, which know one big thing: how to roll up into a ball of sharp spikes and protect themselves from the supposedly smarter foxes. The pivot point in any good to great transition comes when a company understands its hedgehog concept, the intersection of three circles. The first circle, what best ignites the passion of people inside the company.
What invoked the passion was the idea that we were going to free up the American people to travel in short-haul markets, because those markets were an addendum to the other carriers. Their flights were scheduled and priced for the long-haul passenger, not the short-haul passenger. So you had a tremendous number of people who had never flown.
You know, he totally democratized the skies. Before Southwest, you had to be rich, professional, you know, dressed. Now he's serving the masses.
The second circle, at what can the company be best in the world?
Clearly, it was our people and our culture that were radically different, not just from other airlines, but from most businesses. As far as the tangibles are concerned, Boeing will sell you an airplane if you've got the resources to buy it. You can lease space at the airport. In other words, all of the tangible things are available to competitors, to other carriers. The thing that's really hard to match is the intangible spirit of the people of Southwest Airlines.
Our people are our first customer, most important customer. Our passengers are our second most important customer, and our shareholders are our third. That's a bit odd, maybe for a Fortune 500 company, but
if we get altruistic people, if we get people that want to serve, and if we provide them an environment where they can be themselves, then you'll get a tremendous amount of dedication, diligence, and productivity.
The third circle, what best drives the economic engine?
Well, we were going to be the most productive short-haul airline in the world. We were going to get people out of their automobiles, get them off buses, and put them into the air.
Our planes pull into the jetway, board passengers, and pull out again in 10 minutes or less.
We always said, we're going to provide more for less, not less for less. We're going to give you a better quality of service, on-time performance, friendly people that welcome you.
Greetings, all you beautiful little heartthrobbers and fun seekers. Welcome aboard
You go back to the early 1970s and you look at how Southwest got this really simple idea. They could be the best, low-cost, high-spirit airline, steadily increasing profit per fuselage. Just keep turning those planes, turning those planes, turning those planes. That idea guides them today. The beauty of the Southwest story is how they had that one simple, elegant, underlying idea, and they stayed with it now for over 30 years.
Now the next generation of leaders faces its own challenges. When 2,500 employees assemble to hear about the state of the company, they're given a wake-up call by CEO Gary Kelly.
This year alone, our fuel costs will rise $600 million. And if you're wondering if that's a big number, remember that we made $489 million for all of 2005. So that means that unless something else changes, every year our profits will go down, profit sharing will go down, and the stock price will go down.
Compounding the rising cost of jet fuel is another serious threat. Market research shows that competitors are co-opting the company's key brand identifiers.
We are facing more and more challenges in terms of new competition, more low-cost competition, and record high energy prices. So we will change, but we want to change to the better and not to the worse.
Upstairs, thank you.
A basic characteristic of enduring greatness, a passionate adherence to core values, is guiding change at Southwest.
If you have that passion, if you have those core values, that will carry you through any emergency.
And that means you have to be able to last in all kinds of new environments and new cultures and new disruptions and things that might hit you. How does that happen? The key is that tension between values which remain constant. We hold these values constant. They are what we stand for. But we separate it from our practices, our specific strategies, the ways of doing things, and we preserve the values but change the practices.
I think after September 11th, when our people responded magnificently, because they're not confined by rules and regulations, they can step up to the occasion. Putting the airline on the ground, as directed by the Department of Transportation, and to bring it back up, they were just simply magnificent. When our first plane took off from Love Field, everybody was singing, and most of us...
It was really the moment. The whole airline came together.
Yeah.
The Good to Great project focused on Fortune 500 companies, but Collins and his researchers came to see that the findings would apply far beyond business.
We were astounded to discover that somewhere between a third and a half of our readers came from outside of business. I mean, this is a study where we began with stock returns, Wall Street, and we get people in education and healthcare, and policing, all over the map. We learned from that data that these are not principles of business. These are principles of greatness. The critical question is not the difference between business and social, between business and non-business, but between great and good.
What can be done to improve the high school graduation rate for Latino youths in Arizona? That was the question facing business and civic leaders who assembled to hear Jim Collins speak on the issue. His task? To introduce the results of a statewide project that holds promise for the nation.
What can we learn from the contrast of schools that do better than others in the same circumstances in educating Latino youth, defined as achievement per student, not per school, not per district, not per state, not financially, achievement per student?
Half of the Latino children in Arizona's elementary schools do poorly on the standard third grade reading tests, meaning lost opportunities as they grow older.
We know that they're not doing well in school, and the issue would be, what do we do about it?
Starting in 1997, they're about 15 points below what we would predict.
Mary Jo Waits of the Center for the Future of Arizona read about the Good to Great research and realized that adapting this approach could stimulate local educational reform.
A light bulb went off. Collins' methodology immediately captured my attention.
Collins agreed to help design the research model.
The idea was that if we could identify schools in Arizona that had 50% Latino students and 50% students that were poor, and we can figure out what they were doing to go from good to great, then we would have a study that shows what works that nobody could debate. Are there any red flags on this one? After we had done our interviews and collected data, we had a meeting with Jim Collins over the phone. And the first question he was so excited, he goes, "Well, did you find any level 5 leaders?"
Good morning, Mustangs.
Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Hey, hi, Cody.
Julie Tate Peach's school in Yuma was discovered during the research. Peach and her faculty had engineered a remarkable transition. When they began, 40% of third graders could not read at grade level. 8 years later, almost every child was either right on track or even better.
Yuma has been described as a border town. There are lots of Hispanic families, especially in our school, that work in agriculture. From time to time, they have to leave Yuma to follow the agriculture. That makes it hard on the kids. When I came to Ellisburn, one of the first things we did was we looked at test scores.
Julie came into the school like a whirlwind.
Then I said, whoa, we've got a few kids we're not including in being able to read and write and do math.
I think it was the first time the data was presented to us in a way where we thought, oh my goodness, you know, we need to change this.
Everybody's got to test at the same time. We were going to make sure that we had 100% of our kids at grade level or above.
Very good.
There was a true message that everybody was going to be accounted for and that everybody was going to learn how to read and write.
Peach had committed her school to go from good to great.
Okay, here we go. Ready? Block.
The first thing that we did was we narrowed our focus. Okay, what is it that we don't need to teach, that we just need to push away and say, well, I may like that, and that might be fun, but do I need to teach it?
I'm lost, said Baby Bear.
And then the next step was we realized that working with kids in small groups was what made a difference.
Okay, everybody put that inside your bag.
When you teach in a small group, 5 or 6 kids, you're able to focus on individual needs, individual achievement, and give feedback. The hard thing is that when you're not successful, you have to say, it's not a matter of where my kids come from. It's not a matter of their parents or their condition that they live in or their situation. It's our responsibility. This is a non-English speaker for the most part.
Early in the transition, the school created a program of continuous assessment and speedy interventions.
Every Wednesday, teachers get together, they talk about individual students, where those kids need to be, and what other alternate interventions they might need.
And just being in small guided reading groups has helped her.
And it's really a collaborative team effort. That's the most important thing. They've got to come every day.
People often say that public schools are like industrial age factories. They're doing this mass-produced education, one size fits all.
We all agree with that? That's a really good.
Well, if you looked at our schools, it's really about customized learning and instruction.
Mainly my concern with her is comprehension.
When they're identifying which students aren't doing well or which teachers aren't doing well, they're immediately intervening. It's really about the teachers and the principals working together. And if there's not ownership all through the ranks, it's just not going to work.
Faculty and staff at Ellisburn School had set an audacious goal. They insisted on the same for their students.
What did you learn today at school?
As with every good to great transition, momentum builds gradually. Results began to multiply. Grateful parents were soon providing recognition and encouragement. The Covarrubias family talks about school every night at dinner.
Dinosaurs were 65 million years ago.
We can see, you know, their happiness, their faces, you know, their joy. That's the best way we can get their smile. I'm also very thankful with the principal, Mrs. Peach, because she's always there.
Please join me in reciting the Declaration of Independence.
Holy truths be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their...
When I look at these principles, they say we will not capitulate on making sure that our kids learn how to read. We will not capitulate in letting our kids down that they must be able to do math. We will not capitulate and allow the fact that we face very difficult circumstances and limited resources to hold us back from the responsibility that even if we feel alone, we will not capitulate.
What happened in Yuma will be communicated throughout Arizona as leaders seek to make certain that every elementary school achieves at comparable levels.
It never occurred to us when we approached Jim Collins that there could be such a fundamental match between what he did in good to great.
Good.
And what we've been able to do in looking at schools and finding ways to improve in schools. So it's the perfect combination of methodology, of an understanding of what one can do in the future, and of the passion of Jim Collins. It's a great mix for us.
Climbing is, with my research, one of my great passions in life. And they have a link to each other in the sense that a climb is a bit like a big research project. You come at it, it's huge, it's daunting, it may take you a long time to put it together. And you break it into smaller and smaller parts and finally build the whole thing up. You go at a rock climb the exact same way, especially a hard climb.
The story of Collins' research began in 1996 as he sat in his backyard reflecting on a challenge he'd been given a few days earlier.
I was having dinner in San Francisco with Bill Meehan, who ran the San Francisco office of McKinsey & Company. He leans over his salad and he said, "Your previous work is extremely interesting, but it has a problem. I found it depressing and useless because the things that made those companies great that you studied before were in place because they had great parents. But what happens if you didn't have great parenting? What happens if you wake up midway through your life and you had a mediocre start? Can you change your own trajectory?" And that challenge is what led to that moment in my backyard where I pulled out a sheet of paper and drew the good to great curve and asked the question, can a good company become a great company?
Collins and his team of 21 researchers embarked on a 5-year effort that included what they called death marches of financial analysis. They reviewed 1,435 companies that appeared on the Fortune 500 list between 1965 and 1995, searching for good to great cases. To answer Meehan's challenge, they studied companies that jumped from average performance to sustained market-beating results, and then compared them to a group that failed to transcend mediocrity.
There were times when the team thought, we're just going to have nothing but chaos in the end. We have all this information, we had boxes of material, we would debate, we didn't know what it would mean, and there would just be a point of despair. We're going to do 5 years of research and not find anything.
But the effort paid off. They discovered 11 companies that averaged cumulative stock returns 6.9 times the general market in the 15 years following their transition points. In what became the most important aspect of their work, the researchers identified same industry comparison companies that failed to make the leap. The central question became, what principles explain why some companies went from good to great, while others, in nearly identical circumstances, did not? Their findings became the basis for the book.
You know those genetic twin studies where you find two kids and they were born with the same genetics and the same family, but then separated at birth? And then you find them later in life and you rewind the tape and you learn about nature versus nurture. You take that same idea and apply it to organizations.
When the research was released in 2001, the business community responded with admiration. What was unanticipated was the speed with which leaders in other sectors adopted the good to great framework to help solve 21st century problems far removed from what the 11 companies were doing 25 or 30 years ago.
When I read Good to Great, I was fascinated because so many of the issues that came out of the book I could think could apply to policing. Overcoming obstacles, discipline, overcoming adversity. There was not a word about policing in the book, but it was all about policing from my perspective.
When the Dallas Morning News published a report showing that crime was out of control in America's 9th largest city, it shocked City Hall and triggered a transition in the police department that is still unfolding.
The findings were staggering. In crime, Dallas was the worst of any city over 1 million in the country. Number 2, it also showed that the city was in the middle of the pack as far as what it spent on crime. That indicated they were not using their dollars very efficiently.
Prior to publication, the newspaper took the unprecedented step of first presenting its findings to city officials.
One assistant city manager took our report and literally threw it right back at us across the table. We gave the city council 3 or 4 opportunities to come talk to us about it. And then we published Sunday in one special section with a lot of promotion on page 1.
I think what it meant to the men and women of the department was kind of a confirmation of what many of them believed and felt by shedding light on some of the problems that gave an opportunity for improvement.
Within 2 months of the report's release, David Kunkel was hired as the new chief of police.
We have a city manager form of government, which is very unusual for the 9th largest city in America. Most big cities have a strong mayor form of government. And it was surprising to some of us when the manager ended up hiring a chief in our own backyard.
I think there was an expectation the city would search out a superstar, a known quantity.
And I thought, why go all across the country and do a major search only to find some guy in the backyard who no one's ever heard of locally, let alone nationally.
It was just kind of a letdown.
It was interesting because I thought I had a very good reputation and really thought that I would be very well received, but I wouldn't have been a candidate if I didn't think I could have been successful and effective.
Let me put on my glasses and make sure I did have prepared remarks, but I think...
He is extremely charismatically challenged.
I'm a quiet, shy person. I'm small in stature.
The first time I ever met him at his unveiling when he was announced to the world, I said, "Hi, I'm the mayor." And he looked at his shoes.
In most settings, I'll be the one standing in the corner with my hands in my pocket, being very uncomfortable.
And I thought, well, how can he be a police chief and have no presence and have no charisma, have social skill issues?
Kunkel will have to overcome officer morale, which is at an all-time low, and tackle a crime rate that just months ago was at an all-time high.
Kunkel began his tenure by quietly assessing his officers.
Kunkel came in and said, "I want to talk to the officers." And he literally interviewed them, and he asked them to submit answers to questions that he wanted to review. And he sat up late at night for months and months and read all of these answers. And the officers thought it was very strange.
I think that the first concept I heard from the book was the concept of getting the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats, and that seemed to resonate.
Within 9 months of his taking over, after he put all the right people in place, he did an extraordinary thing. He stood up at a press conference and said, "I'm going to get overall crime down by 10% next year and murder by 20%, and by God, that's what I'm going to do." And we all were shocked.
People thought he was nuts. He said, 10% drop in overall crime, 20% drop in homicide.
In pursuit of the goals, Kunkel keyed his leadership to getting the facts out into the open and using the daily meeting of command officers to analyze and deal with them.
Kunkel's very good about looking at the cold, hard, ugly facts and saying, murder's up this week, but by God, it's going to be down next week.
We're in an industry, policing, where you are confronted with the brutal facts all the time.
First up this morning, we have a homicide update.
The media covers us very aggressively. We have community leaders and activists.
We're having a problem with the homeless.
The city council that demands accountability.
We had 50 of the premises had alarms.
Suspect shot at the complainant with an assault rifle.
This morning at 5:30, we got a 4111 call.
Suspect opened the door up, shot multiple times.
Sometimes the brutal facts can beat you down, believing that you can't ever achieve any real progress.
You're saying, Mike, we don't have any suspect information other than the vehicle description at this time?
And so every single day, the first thing we do is look at the crime statistics for the day.
Southwest Patrol is currently down 47 offenses versus last year. In the 28-day time period, we are up.
And what's happened the previous day and previous week and previous month.
We've knocked that down where we were up.
And what can we do to reduce those numbers? Then it's allowed us to communicate to our officers so they can more clearly understand what their mission is and how they should be spending their time.
Chief Kunkel has brought accountability to the department, and that is exactly what those Thursday morning meetings have done.
The traffic stops relate directly to the crime rate.
The crime rate going down.
The crime rate going down if the traffic stops are going up.
He's a very secure person. He surrounds himself with strong people, which was a change at the police department.
How do they know which ones are the multiple offense locations, Nancy? Would they know that at all?
I think the appointment of David Brown as his top assistant is a good indication. Brown is a strong leader.
What I heard is your guys pretty much do self-initiated or they get it from narcotics.
Quite frankly, my promotion sent a great message to this organization. If you perform well, you'll be rewarded.
So who's the community policing officer for that area?
Rex Jones, and he is here.
We feel that our performance makes a difference, that officers in an area can make a difference.
Previously, were you engaged with them on their calendars when they would have meetings and when they would need officers there?
No, sir. What we brought to this meeting was that accountability, specifically asking those officers, are you engaged? And having them accept that they have not been.
Your presence is going to be vital for them. I mean, it's really important that you attend, Rex.
It's just, quite frankly, just being honest with people, and people like honesty.
The transition in Dallas is beginning to deliver hard-won results by overcoming challenges in the public sector.
There are so many obstacles. There are elected politicians with all kinds of agendas. There's an enormous bureaucracy that is almost impenetrable. And so it shocked me that we could have the police chief come in and apply these principles to City Hall and just in his own department make such an incredible difference. He met the goal for murder, he got halfway to overall crime, and then he stood up and did it all over again.
And this year, they're still impressive, 10% in overall crime and 10% in homicides. So he's sticking his neck out, and I think it shows a lot of courage. I would say that we grossly underestimated his competence.
You can't have economic development, which is the #1 priority for the city of Dallas at this moment, unless your city's safe. Because if you're not a safe city, you can never be a great city.
We became really passionate, and I became really passionate about the application of our work outside of business. Because we came to see that if we only have great companies, and it is important that we have great companies, but if we only have great companies, we will merely have a prosperous nation, not a great nation. To be a truly great nation, we must have great healthcare and great education and great police and great nonprofits and great universities and great orchestras. All the rest of society must also be great.
How does one ignite a transition from being merely good to becoming truly great? The Good to Great research team uncovered a 4-stage process. Disciplined people, disciplined thought, disciplined action, and finally, building greatness to last. Stage 1, disciplined people, begins with level 5 leaders, a finding that was unexpected.
We found the only chief executives that ignited companies from good to great in the history of the Fortune 500 up to the time that we did the study. And what surprised us is not what we found, but what we didn't find. You would expect these towering, charismatic heroes, but many of them had a charisma bypass. You would expect them to be these saviors from the outside, but they were quiet insiders. What stood out about these leaders? It wasn't their overpowering personality. It was their humility.
Maybe the way we've been taught and programmed is that to be effective, you have to have a larger-than-life personality. You have to be able to fill up a room. You have to be the savior that comes in with this idea better than anybody's ever had before.
What's amazing to me is that the most successful companies appear to have CEOs who are selfless, not egomaniacs, not flashy, not looking for personal perks or resume building.
Ultimately, I think that you're successful if you do question yourself and you are constantly trying to learn.
One of the things that we've always refrained from doing at Southwest Airlines is talking about size, how big we can get, talking about how prominent we can get. Those things were of no interest to us whatsoever. It was basically just doing the job on a day-to-day basis, which was laying the foundation work for the future of the company 15, 20, 30 years down the line.
The second part of Stage 1 is the concept of first who, then what, which was also a surprise.
We thought that we would find that the good to great leaders first set a vision, a direction, a strategy. They pointed the way, and they would get everybody to go there. Guess what? Our comparison companies, the ones that didn't become great, they did that. What did our leaders do? They first got the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people into the key seats, and then determined where to drive the bus. First who, then what. When I was in business school, I was always taught the way you start a company is you have to have a single great idea, a clear, precise product or service and how it's going to compete. And then you look at Amgen, they didn't do that. They had a broad area of advanced biology, and they assembled some resources, and then they basically said, our product is going to come because we're going to get great people, great scientists, and great business people, and then we're going to figure out what we're going to make.
When Amgen started, biotech was really in the early days. Very little was known. There were not a lot of scientific papers you could read. There were not a lot of eminent scientists who knew a lot of answers, so you could ask for those answers. We had to believe that only about the top 5% of PhDs could really do that kind of pioneering work.
Non-vertebral, vertebral, along with hip, each being important.
So basically the direction of the company would automatically follow the best ideas that these people had, and they were generating ideas because they were motivated.
There is no substitute for the best people, period. There isn't a process that'll overcome less than the best people. There isn't some technology that'll do it. And so we try to find the very best people for the job.
And they had bioengineered indigo for blue jeans, and they had chicken growth hormone. They were trying all kinds of things until they finally settled upon what became the most successful biotech product of its time, EPO. It's a classic, wonderful example of a startup that is first get the right people, then figure out what to make.
Stage 2 is about how to think, beginning with the need to confront the brutal facts of reality.
Air action is now in execution in North Vietnam.
September 1965. Commander James Stockdale is shot out of the sky over North Vietnam. He survives to become the highest-ranking POW to be held in the infamous Hanoi Hilton during the Vietnam War. Jim Collins first met Admiral Stockdale in 1991 at Stanford University.
I had this wonderful walk on the Stanford campus with Admiral Stockdale. Stockdale told me the story of being in the prison camp in Vietnam. And I asked him, I said, how did you not get depressed? And he said, I never got depressed because I never wavered in my faith that I would get out and turn it into the defining event of my life, that in retrospect, standing here with you today on this campus, I wouldn't trade it. And then I asked him a little later, by the way, who didn't make it out as strong as you? And he said, oh, that was easy. It was the optimists. I said, you sounded pretty optimistic back there. He said, oh, no, the optimists. They were the ones who always said, we're going to be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come and it would go. We're going to be out by Easter, and then Easter would come and it would go. And then Thanksgiving, and it would come and go, and then it would be Christmas again. And the optimists, They died of a broken heart. And that's when Admiral Stockdale grabbed me by the shoulders and said, this is what I learned. You must never, ever confuse the need on the one hand for unwavering faith that you can and will prevail with the need on the other hand to have the discipline to confront the most brutal facts. When we were studying the good to great companies as they were wallowing in mediocrity or going through potential bankruptcy or any kind of difficulties that they faced, we found that the executive teams all had this Stockdale paradox. They started with, what are the brutal facts? It's going to take a long time. We're not going to be out of here by Christmas. What are those facts? But we are not going to waver from our faith that we can actually prevail and make this into a great company, no matter what anybody else thinks. It's up to us to decide to do that. But we will not start with false hope. We will start with what are the brutal facts. It will take years. We will not be out by Christmas.
Also part of stage 2 is the hedgehog concept, a demanding intellectual exercise designed to yield a simple clarity.
We're in the research team, and we're debating, wait a minute, one set of companies had strategies, the other set of the companies had strategies, what was different? And then Lee Wilbanks on the team piped up and she said, what so strikes me is how the comparison companies just remained shrouded in mist and fog. They never seemed to get out of the trees. But the good to greats had this moment of epiphany where they saw the one big thing, the one big simple thing that they could focus on to be great.
1, 2, 3.
The hedgehog concept requires a precise understanding of 3 intersecting circles.
I love Walgreens. This is a hedgehog's hedgehog. For 30 years, they had the same basic underlying hedgehog idea. The best, most convenient drugstores, steadily increasing profit per customer visit, done with great passion, over and over again. 30 years, one great result. Circle number 1, passion. They love drugstores. Most of the executives have a pharmacy degree. They're passionate about this business. Circle 2, it's the best, most convenient drugstores. That's very important. The insight, the clarity, the precision that it is the best, most convenient drugstores in the world.
We had a store in Pasadena, Texas, and we needed to relocate it out of a strip mall. So we had an A location that we wanted to move it to, but the owner didn't want to sell. The store was doing well, but we knew it could do a lot better. So rather than stay in the current strip mall, we moved to what we considered a B location. We built a brand new store. Store sales went up 30%. Store did fantastic. 3 years later, the A location owner decided to retire. The decision had to be made. Do we sacrifice building expenses to move it to that A location? Well, the decision was easy. We wanted to put the best stores on the best corners for Walgreens. We moved the store to that A location. The store went up another 30% in revenues, and the store became a $1 million profit store for the Walgreens company. Walgreens' commitment to putting the best store on the best corner, to move this store 2 times in 3 years to get the best location, is what makes Walgreens a great company.
Circle 3, economic engine. They had this wonderful insight that it's not profit per store or profit per employee or profit per transaction. It's profit per customer visit. And when you take convenient drugstores, which increases customer visits, multiplied times profit per customer visit, infused with the passion for the whole enterprise, and you turn that over and over again, you go from an average company to one that beats the stock market by 15 times.
All right, take care. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Stage 3, Disciplined Action, is about how to harness a culture of discipline into building cumulative momentum to a point of breakthrough result. What the researchers called the flywheel effect.
Here, you build a culture of discipline, and the earmark of that is the discipline to remain focused on that hedgehog concept.
Here at Southwest Airlines, we've had every opportunity over the years to fly different airplanes, add meal service, have first-class service, interline with other airlines. All those things have been studied very, very carefully, and yet we had the discipline to say no.
Everybody thinks that discipline is somehow about what you do. But what the Southwest case so beautifully illustrates is discipline begins with what you say no to. It's what you have the discipline to not do.
You have to be able to turn down revenue-generating opportunities in order to have a niche. That's how you test. You know, people say, well, you don't have first-class seats. No, we don't. If you want to fly first class, you have to go to somebody else, because we're not going to increase our costs by 40% in order to get 20% more of the market.
What was so striking about these good to great transitions is that they didn't happen in one fell swoop. They didn't happen in one big innovation. In fact, it was much more organic. It was like pushing on a giant heavy flywheel. Take Starbucks. What a wonderful example of the flywheel. Push upon push early on, all this effort, 13 years to get 5 stores. But they didn't stop. Pushing on the flywheel to where today, what took them 13 years now takes them 1 day for 5 stores.
Starbucks' success is driven by a hedgehog concept that is based on delivering an uncommon experience around something as simple as a cup of coffee.
There you go. Thank you.
The original business plan in 1987 was for 100 stores, and I couldn't raise a dime of private equity, and I literally crossed it out and wrote 70. We now open 5 new stores a day, and we have 11,000 stores around the world.
You got a venti with room Americano? Thank you.
What we're really good at, I think, is recognizing that coffee gave us the ability to create an environment that previously did not exist in America.
Good morning. I can help you right over here.
We began to understand that we could create a store environment that merchandised whole bean and ground coffee for the home, but romanced the beverage and create a sense of community in our stores.
And can I have your name for the cup, Valerie?
At Starbucks, the flywheel that drives sustained high achievement operates in thousands of stores that provide a sanctuary between home and work, a sanctuary called the third place.
It's a place where the customers can come in, get away from work, get away from home for a little bit, and take a break from it all.
What brings me here is the fact that everyone knows me. It's kind of like Cheers. Everyone knows who I am and what I drink, and they're very personable.
Hi, how are you?
Starbucks is an example of Stage 4, Building Greatness to Last, which centers on sustaining momentum toward achieving goals while adhering to a passionately held set of core values and a sense of purpose far beyond just making money.
One of the great things about Starbucks is that all of our store managers across the world set the expectation immediately. When a person is hired, they sit down and they have what we call first impressions.
So the mission statement was created by partners in 1990, and it's really something that we live and breathe.
So I think that's why we're so successful in maintaining that consistency worldwide.
So if we go to China, we may need some different practices to adapt to that culture, but it will still be Starbucks values. If we go to Ashland, Oregon, that store may be different than the store in New York, but it is still Starbucks values. Same core values, local adaptations. Preserve the core, stimulate progress.
Consistency is very important to us. It's part of the Starbucks experience, unique experience we're providing our customer on a daily basis. We place such an important emphasis on the training. As you know, as a matter of fact, Starbucks spend more money on training than advertisement or than other marketing activities.
Can you see us? Okay.
I walk into stores in China, and what I'm looking for and what I see in large part is exactly what I look for and see in our stores in the States. I see people having business meetings. I see mothers with strollers. I see young Chinese enjoying Frappuccino. I'm stunned and surprised myself at the awareness that Chinese people and young Chinese consumers have about the Starbucks brand.
As the brand gains momentum, the company's core values guide expansion into financial services and entertainment.
We innovate in a way that's consistent with the business that we're in. Who could have imagined that Starbucks would be in the music business? We're in the financial services business with the Starbucks card, which now is 15% of all transactions. And it's all happened at its core from a coffee company.
I got a tall, non-fat chai latte for Seth.
To me, Starbucks captures the difference between just great results, great stock returns, great profitability, great momentum, great growth, and going to an iconic, great company. Because behind those numbers is a passionate spirit that's authentic, it's real.
I grew up in Brooklyn in a place that's called the Projects, federally subsidized housing, and I saw firsthand the fracturing of the American dream when my family went without health insurance. And so that shaped the fact that I wanted to try, with the help of so many other people, to build the kind of company that, in a sense, my own father did not get a chance to work for. A company that would value people not because of the color of their skin or their education or their gender or their age, but would respect all people and create an environment in which success would be shared.
That is tangerine, frappuccino,
Yeah.
and the other one.
You can't build a big company of this scale and magnitude by controlling and managing everything from home base.
And more drinks.
Bring them in.
So,
You have to attract and retain great people. You have to identify leaders early on, but you have to give them the tools to succeed, and then you have to embrace the fact that you have to let them go do it.
These are too good to give back.
all right. Yeah, no, you can do that.
I'll drink one of them. Thank you for all you've done. Thank you. I mean that very sincerely. I'm so proud of what Starbucks has become in China. Thank you. Good service.
Someone came to our lab once and made the observation that what stands out about our work is that it's well-founded, research-based, well-founded hope. And here you have all these companies that there are all kinds of reasons why they shouldn't have gone to great. I mean, they were in the steel business, or they were in the drugstore business, or in the airline business. And then you have people like Julie Tate Peach in Yuma, Arizona, where you'd say, well, it can't be done with Latino kids, and she does it. Over and over again in our work, what it shows is you are not imprisoned by your circumstances. You are freed by your choices. Greatness is not a function of circumstance. It's a function of conscious choice and discipline. I get asked the question all the time, how do you become a level 5? And I think the answer begins with you have to find something. Engage in something you are so passionate about that you're willing to endure the pain of being level 5. People may not believe in you. You may not be supported. It may be a position of great criticism. But if you begin with that passion, I'm passionate about these kids. I'm passionate about our people. I'm passionate about our values. I'm passionate about what we're trying to do. I really care about this. That's where level 5 begins. If you start there, you can endure.
Funding for Good to Great has been provided by grants from